How to create a notification policy. One of the most common scenarios is when you have created a notification policy to get an email with that important event, but you want to access directly to BHOM console to see that event. Well, in this demo, we will show you how to create it. Let's go to BHOM console. Once in BHOM console, in event policy configuration, we need to create a new policy as we saw in our previous demo. So, click in Create button. Now, we need to name it. For this policy, we will type notification policy with a direct link. Now, in description field, we will type notification policy with direct link to event in BHOM console. Precedence, we will leave it as it is. Now, in event selection criteria, we would select all the events with class equals to event, and in the message slot contains base 64. In time frame, we will use always active since we want to run permanently. And now, most important and interesting part of this policy, configuration. First, we need to convert our event ID to base 64 format. Second, populate with BHOM URL with event ID. And third, notification. So let's start creating an advanced enrichment policy type. Once we get the workflow, we will select variable since we are going to need to assign the ID to this variable. In label, type convert event ID to base 64. In name, type the variable name. For this example, we will use base 64 event ID. Now, in value, you will pick function up to use to base 64 function, which is the one that helps us to convert it to base 64. Now, click on select function. Let's look for function to base 64. Once we get the form, we will feed it up text string. So we will type ID, which is the one that we want to convert. Then apply. Now, next step will be to create the enrichment part. For that, we need to go to drop-down menu that it says add below in the bottom half of the workflow. Click on it and select enrich. Once we get the enrich form, we will type in the label enrich message. Then, in the slot to enrich, we select detailed message. For value, select function because we are going to need a function called concat. Click on select the function, concat. Now, we will type in text string 1 the URL of our BHOM event page. And in text string 2, the variable that contains the ID but previously converted to base 64. Click on apply. Save it. Now we have configured the content of our email. So next step will be to create our notification policy. Now in policy configuration, we need to select notification and configure email settings. In this case, in notification service, we use email since we want to receive this event information through email. There is another option related to incident, but we will see it later in other example. Now, we need to fill the recipient information, subject, and email's body previously configured. Recall, in message body, we should add the variable for the link in BHOM console. So, once we receive email, we are able to click on it and redirect to event details in BHOM console. Finally, you can select the notification criteria of the events to be sent. You can use severity and/or status. For this example, we will use only severity equals to critical, which means that only critical events will be sent, no others. If we want to use the status, you need to select the respective checkbox and select what status you want to send. But in this example, we only use severity. Also, you have another option, notification action. If you want to perform additional actions over that event, you can auto-assign or auto-acknowledge the event. No need for this example. Click on Save. Then, enable the policy to run immediately and save it. Now, you have configured your new notification policy for event with a direct link to Home console. Now, let's see an example of this kind of policy. As we recall from our policy, once we get the event in our console, we are going to convert our event in base64 format in order to get the link for our message body and then send the email. So let's trigger the event test. Once we get the event in our Home console, as we can see in our screen, in this case, we have configured a critical event for our host test, and message contains base64 string as we used in our selection criteria in the policy. Now, let's see our event details. As we can see, base64 is in the message slot, but now we can see in detailed message slot the full link to see the event directly. In Log and Notes tab, both policies are there. Advanced enrichment policy was the first one to perform, and the second one is the notification, as we declare in our policy. Now, we have got our email as per our notification policy. Let's check it out. As you can see, link is in the body of the message. So we can click on it directly and it should take us to event details. Clicking in the link, and now we are able to see the event details as per our policy. As we saw, policy has been performed by two internal policies, advanced enrichment and notification.